I have a question. How do you understand who has made him glad at his countenance? Who is being glad, made glad?
Well, the king himself is the one that's receiving these emblems from the God the Father, right?
So it's Jesus who is made glad at the countenance of the Father.
That's right. That's right. So,
Why? Why is it important for us?
by the way, the name Jesus is used twice here. The word salvation is Yeshua, right? So verse 1, the king shall joy in thy strength, O Lord, and in Yeshua, how greatly shall he rejoice. And then he says the same thing here, how his glory is great in thy salvation. His glory is great in Yeshua. That's the word salvation is Christ's name. So it's very interesting that Jesus' name here is used in this psalm to describe, obviously, Jesus is the source of our salvation. So Jesus is made exceedingly glad with the countenance of God. The idea here is that all these blessings, all these gifts that come from the Father are given to the Son, and through the Son they're also given to his bride, to his people, and to all that the Son has created is restored to rightness. And this is why this idea of the latter rain of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit, which is connected to the anointing oil that's poured out on the king when he's coronated, is describing this and is being described in this verse. It's actually, again, the restoration of Christ to his original place of authority as God on the throne.
I don't understand what's the significance of this those words in the Psalm 21, because Jesus is always looking at the face of his Father, and suddenly it says that it is great. Maybe I don't understand something.
That's the point, right? So the point is the psalm is describing an event where something is transitioning, something's changing, right? So we say same question, Sister Sasha. We say, well, Jesus is God. Jesus has always been God. He'll always be God. So why why is why is God the Father giving Jesus glory? Jesus has his own glory. Why is God the Father giving Jesus strength? Well, Jesus has his own strength, right? So why is God doing these things? Well, the point here is that Jesus, the whole plan of salvation is being played out. Remember, the controversy in heaven began because a creature wanted to be God, and so Lucifer, an angel, wanted to take the things that did not rightfully belong to him, and and he wanted to exalt himself. Well, so Jesus actually is God, but he doesn't take the things that are rightfully his. So the idea is that he's waiting for God to give him that which is rightfully his, but he's not taking it. It's a gift, it's something that's given. So he's showing humility and dependence upon his Father because that's the same thing that he's modeling to us. And so this idea, see, we have these ideas about Jesus, but we're not really understanding the process of what he did or what he came down to do, and then the process of restoring all things back to God is something that happens within himself. And so it's there's something different happening here that has not happened before.
Jesus is acting new as the new Adam, and that's
Yes.
why he's happy. Okay.
Yes. So all of humanity, as well as all of creation, is being restored or has the invitation to be restored to rightness when Jesus is restored to his rightful place. That's why we talk about the restoration of all things or the perfection at the end of when there's no more sin, no more sorrow, right? When we go to the end of the great controversy, there's no damage left because God, everything has been restored to completion. Well, that restoration of completion happens in Christ, and then because of Christ and through Christ and in Christ, it becomes available to us. And so this is what's going on here in the psalm. And just for a reference for those in Proverbs 16, verse 15. Proverbs 16, verse 15 says, "In the light of the king's countenance is life, and his favor is as a cloud of the latter rain." And so again, the idea of the face, the countenance, or the face of the God and the face of the king is connected to the outpouring of the latter rain. And you'll notice the same thing happens in Numbers chapter 6. At the end of the Day of Atonement, there's this priestly blessing, and the blessing is connected to the countenance or the face of God. He says in Numbers 6, verse 22, he says, it's verse 24, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace." And then verse 27 sums it up. It says, "And so shall they put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them." So you see the same uh, elements here in the blessing of the high priest, that the blessing is, there's a blessing connected to the face of the countenance of God that's lifted up upon us, and that of course is also connected to the outpouring of the latter rain. So this is all the symbolism or the imagery that is actually written into Psalm 21. It's using all that biblical imagery to describe the same process or the same event. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I will have my questions later. Thank you.
Of course, humans are the only creatures that are intimate face to face. So this is about the king being intimate with his bride as well. This face to face that brings gladness. And I think it's also interesting. I looked in verse 6. Both words for made, they're actually two different words, and neither of them are the word for made in Genesis 1. Nothing's being like created out of nothing here. The first word is more means to like set or appoint.
Right.
And the second word essentially means just to make glad.
Very good.
Yes. So,
And that's important because the
yes.
idea of the setting or the appointing is again part of the whole kingship coronation imagery.
Yes.
So verse 7 kind of caps off the final part of the coronation. It says, "For the king trusteth in the Lord, and through the mercy of the Most High he shall not be moved." So the idea here, the same thing happens in Daniel 7, 13 and 14, that God establishes a kingdom that will not pass away. It'll be forever and ever. So it uses the same idea. So it just shows the connection of the king to God, and also that from this connection, God's mercy it flows out to be a blessing to all, and it describes the mercy of the Most High, and He shall not be moved. And at that sense, the reference to the Most High is actually a reference to both of them, because once now Christ has been installed on the throne, then He co-reigns with His Father on the throne, and that's where Revelation talks about the Father and the Son sitting on the throne together. So now when you refer to the Most High, or you refer to the Lord, you refer to God, actually you're referring back to both of them, because he's been restored to where he came down to save us from. He's now restored to that place. And that's a very important part of the Great Controversy, because this is the event that Satan hates, right? Because when Satan, a creature, wanted to be on the throne as God, God said no. And now Satan is actually witnessing an event where someone who is a creature, because Jesus is a man, he's a son of man. So you see the Son of Man, who is also the Son of God, is now exalted to the throne as God. So the very thing that Satan wanted for himself, he now sees conferred on Christ. And of course, this is what causes the great controversy. This is what causes the time of trouble. This is what causes Revelation 12. This is the story of Revelation 12. This is when the dragon has wrath with the woman, because the baby has been born and exalted to the throne. And so he goes after the bride. He tries to destroy the bride, right? That's the story of Revelation chapter 12.
Yes.
Go ahead, Daniel.
This is totally out of left field. No man knoweth the day or the hour, not the Son, but the Father only. Does that mean Jesus doesn't know when he's coming back?
I think there's a lot more questions we could ask because we tend to think of the phrase his coming as what?
Second coming.
Second coming. Yeah. But actually, there's a process of his coming, isn't there? So, I mean, we could actually spend a lot of time on that verse. So there's a couple different schools of thought.
Our Advent pioneers understood the verse to mean no one but the Father makes known the day or the hour. It's not that the Son doesn't know, it's that it's the Father's prerogative to make it known, to announce it, to proclaim it.
Right, which is part of and that's the part of Psalm 21 that is accurate, or that's the part of Revelation 5 that is accurate, that the Father is making these things known. That's, by the way, that's part of the blessing, right? Because we already know, I mean, since we're, quote Sister White, she says, she writes in early writing, one of her first visions, she says that the people hear this thunder and then God's people hear the day and hour of his coming. So God makes it known. Now, whether the idea here that the idea that you're talking about is the most people take that to mean that Jesus doesn't know. I don't feel like I have the wisdom or the authority to tell Jesus what he knows or what he doesn't know. Since he's the king of the universe, I'll let him tell us what he knows and what he doesn't know. So there's a lot of conjecture. I think people sometimes, I think, go too far with some things.
Well, we have a couple of questions now. So I believe that Jesus did not know when he was in our flesh here, and he just did not know. But when he was resurrected, he already knew after that. So that's why when the disciples asked when, he said, it's not up to you to know that. So he did not open it up for them. Okay, my question is when we read the, Psalm 21 and we talk about coronation, I agree with that, but what kind of coronation we have here? Because when I read Revelation 4 and 5, I see 3 possibility for coronation. How many coronations do you identify for Christ? If there is any identification, is it only 1, 2, 3? You see, I don't really come to the studies. That's why I ask those questions.
Okay.
Is it how many coronations?
So the king, according to the Bible, if you look at Saul and you look at David and you look at Solomon, the king is coronated 3 times. And so there's 3 separate coronations, and after the third coronation, then that kingdom he's established, and of course, actually uses the word forever when it comes to David and Solomon.
Okay.
Of course, Saul is not coronated the third time. That's why he does not become the line of the king does not go through Saul. He was only coronated twice, and then of course he failed the test or was unfaithful, and he never received his third coronation. But when you look at David, and you look,
thank you. I'm sorry.
So there's 3 coronations.
Which one is Psalm 21? The first, the third,
Well, that's a good question,
second, the third.
Well, what is the first coronation of Christ? What was the first coronation?
After his resurrection, right away.
The cross.
When he was taken up to heaven, it was his first coronation.
Well, you can say that because the idea of him being resurrected and going up is actually connected to his coronation, but the coronation is actually his crucifixion.
Well, I would agree. I would just use the joyful situation of coronation. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Revelation 4:11, when everyone around the throne says, "Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power." So I
Right.
believe this is the first coronation. Okay.
So you believe what is the first coronation?
When we are talking about Revelation chapter 4, verse 11, this is how I see the first coronation.
Okay.
When all the
So
beasts and those four beasts worshipping God and telling him that he is worthy of taking the glory and honor and power.
okay, well, there's a whole study you can look on Revelation 4. Actually, Revelation 4 is patterned. We've been talking about Daniel 7, 13, and 14. Daniel 7, 13, and 14 is actually a reference to the coronation. But if you look at Daniel 7, 9 through 12, that's the setting up of the throne and the judgment process. And Revelation 4 is directly connected to Daniel 7, 9 through 12, the setting of the thrones and the whole imagery there actually comes
Okay.
from Daniel 7, 9 through 12. And
As I
Revelation 5
understand,
then
yeah,
goes Daniel 7, 13, and 14.
as I understand Daniel 7, it is the judgment process of 1844.
Right,
So it's not the first coronation. It is at
right,
least
that's
the
right.
second one, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So Revelation 4 and 5 is actually, of course, now you got to be careful because what happens is there's a repetition of the pattern, right? So the first coronation, second coronation, and third coronation, the king is being coronated, so there's a repetition of the pattern, but they are three separate distinct events.
Yes.
So you can see duplicity or repeating in the pattern, but that doesn't mean that it's not a separate event. So the book of Revelation actually in the book of Daniel, obviously the crucifixion of Christ, his first coronation was still prophecy, was future. That's Daniel chapter 9. And it also talks about the second coronation, which we're looking forward to. We call it the results in the second coming. That's also part of the prophecies of Daniel. But in the book of Revelation, the first coronation of Christ has already happened. So now the book of Revelation really focuses on the second coronation, and then it brings into light at the end of the book of Revelation the third coronation. So
So
between the books of Daniel and Revelation, you have all three coronations are being referred to.
I might agree that the book of Revelation talks about the third coronation, but in this case, the third coronation should consist of three parts. Because if you allow me to go with you to the chapter 4 and 5. Chapter 4
Sure, go
starts
ahead.
the vision, and the first very important thing happens in verse 11, when everybody around the throne tells that God is worthy. If we go further in chapter 5, we see in verse 12 there are many more creatures. In verse 12, they actually tell about worthiness of God again. And verse 13, as I understand, I may make a mistake, but verse 13 says that the earth is admitting God as being worthy. So I see three parts: from the throne, from heaven, and from earth. I still don't know if it's one coronation or those three coronations. That's why
Okay. So let me help you there. So when the king is coronated, a kingdom is always described in terms of having three parts. There's three parts to the kingdom. So, and you can see this all over in Daniel, when a kingdom is described. The kingdom is described in terms of three parts. So if you go with me, for example, to Daniel, you can go to Daniel 3 or Daniel 4. You can also go to Daniel 5. The kingdom is always described in terms of three parts. So you'll notice in Daniel 4, verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar the king, he's going to make a declaration, a proclamation, and it's to all peoples and nations and languages that dwell on all the earth. So you see there's three parts to the kingdom. There's peoples, and then there's nations, and then there's languages, and that's described as all the earth. You see this, and also, this is mentioned multiple times in the book of Daniel because Daniel obviously is based on kingdom dynamics. So when the king is coronated, there's three parts to the kingdom, and you'll notice in Revelation chapter 5, when the king is coronated, there's three different groups that are going to sing the songs of praise. So that's why you have the breakdown of the three songs or the three responses, the three different groups in Revelation chapter 5 that respond to the coronation of the king is actually describing the decree that goes out in three parts. That's why, by the way, you and I talk about the three angels' messages, because it's the eternal gospel. It's three angels' messages because it goes to every nation, tribe, language, and people. It goes to all. It goes throughout the whole world. So it starts at the house of God, then it goes to the covenant people, then it goes out to the non-covenant people. And by the time, this is the idea is clear that everyone then is invited to worship the king. And if they worship the king, Feast of Tabernacles, that I mentioned in Zechariah 14, if they worship the king, then they have life. If they refuse to worship the king, who is the source of life, then they receive the plagues according to Zechariah 14, or as we know, if you reject the source of life, then you will die. So
Okay.
that's where the book of Revelation uses this biblical kingdom imagery. And that's why there's always three parts to the kingdom. And the coronation, there's three parts to the coronation, and three parts to the proclamation of that kingdom deals with all three different groups of people.
Okay.
So
So,
Revelation 5 is one coronation. It's not three. It actually focuses on the second coronation, which is the one that we're waiting to happen. And when it happens, then it's going to bring the end. It's going to bring the final events that actually Psalm 21 is going to describe.
okay, when we're talking about Revelation 4 and 5, you're saying that it is the second coronation, correct?
Right.
Okay. And it is like three angel messages. The first message, the second, and the third.
Yes. That's where we actually get the three angels' messages from.
Okay. How
pre-
it
The same thing
started?
is repeated in Revelation 14.
Our previous studies have focused on showing a connection with Revelation 4 with 1844 and Jesus' movement from the holy place to the most holy place. While Revelation 5 is when Christ is ministering in the most holy place, that the Father takes him from being a priest before the throne and actually places him on the throne again.
Okay, I would
Correct.
agree.
And that's the second coronation. That's something that we see as happening right now in our time.
Let's go to clear in the terms. I hear two different ideas here. The first one is that chapter 4 and 5 is one coronation which consists of three parts. And it is the second coronation which consists of three parts, which is three angel messages. And we are expecting the third coronation. And we already have the first coronation. Am I correct?
So we have seen the first coronation that happened to the cross.
Okay.
We're awaiting, and the current events, if you want to describe it that way, if you believe that we're looking at the end of the world, surrounds the second coronation that happens in heaven. And this is what Revelation 5 is talking about, the transition from Christ being high priest, which in Revelation 4 and 5 is described as the right hand, and then he goes from ministering before the throne as high priest to being placed upon the throne. That's what Revelation 5 is depicting, the coronation, or the seating of Christ upon the throne.
So you're
That's
saying,
Revelation 4
right
and
now you're
5.
saying that Revelation 5 describes the third coronation, correct?
No, the
No, no.
second. No, the third coronation is in the end of Revelation 21 and 22.
That's the third coronation.
That's the third coronation. That's
Okay.
after the 1,000 years.
Yes.
The second coronation is the one that happens that begins the last day events that we talk about as Adventists.
May I suggest that each coronation consists of 3 parts?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's a fractal. It repeats itself. That's what we said. Thank you. That's right. So it's a pattern that repeats. So yes. And that's why you'll see throughout Revelation 5, when you study Revelation 5, the same as in Daniel, you keep seeing this repetition of threes. The 3 parts, there's 3 parts, there's 3 angels' messages. You'll just see, and of course, that makes sense because it's based on the Godhead himself. There's 3 persons in the Godhead. So the repetition of the 3 is actually a revelation of God. So
Okay.
it makes
Okay.
perfect sense.
Yeah. And so back to my question. When we are in Psalm 21, which coronation is being described here?
The second coronation.
Okay.
And I
So,
will show that to you by the rest of the psalm.
oh, good. Thank you.